Hello, and welcome to the Life Optimizer podcast, where science meets everyday life. My name is Viktoriya, a Yale trained midwife and specialist in all things women's health. I'm so excited that you're here. Today, we're talking about why women's metabolism is different than that of men and how do we optimize it. If it's different, what do we do? Before we begin, I do have a favor to ask. If you're enjoying the content, if you're enjoying these episodes, hit the subscribe button so that we can bring you more amazing content, great guests, and great information. Thank you so much for supporting the work. Okay, let's go on. So let me ask you this. Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right? Maybe eating healthy, you're working out, maybe you're even cutting calories or doing intermittent fasting, but still you're struggling either with stubborn weight or low energy or maybe brain fog or even crazy cravings. Have you ever had that? You're not crazy. And likely you're following the advice that we have gotten that is from research done and studies done on men that has been generalized to women. And today we're talking about what is the difference and how do we focus on the data that gives us information for women's health and not just data for men that has been generalized to women. And we'll talk about why really we shouldn't be generalizing that data to women, why it's important to really explore women's metabolism and how those differences play out in life. Today, we'll break down the biggest mistakes that are slowing down your metabolism. How can you reset your metabolism or help your metabolism naturally to boost energy, to balance hormones, and feel amazing in your body? Make sure you stay until the end. I'll be sharing 5 big things that you can do to really help your metabolism. So let's start optimizing and talking about it. Okay. So why is women's metabolism different? Well, men have a 24-hour metabolic cycle. So every 24 hours, their cycle repeats. And women have a 28-day cycle. And so we can't generalize that data from men and the information we've gotten from men because our hormones don't just cycle every 24 hours. Our hormones change day to day, approximately on a 28-day cycle. Okay. So most diets and workouts are tested on men and then generalized to women. And so famously, Dr. Stacy Sims said in her TED Talk that women are not small men. Women are completely different. And so we need to find ways to really optimize our metabolism, optimize our hormones using information that is geared for women. Women experience hormonal fluctuations that impact metabolism, cravings, energy utilization. And studies show that hormonal phases influence our insulin sensitivity, fat oxidation, which is fat breakdown, and muscle recovery. That means that a one size fits all approach also doesn't work. And we need to individualize the approach to you specifically. And so I'm hoping that today, as we go through this information, you find morsels or bits of information that you can use to then optimize your own metabolism and what's happening for you in your hormonal cycle. So let's go through 3 main differences in women's metabolism. 3 main differences in our metabolism is that our hormones change daily, women burn fat differently, and over restricting our calories actually backfires. So let's dig in. So our hormones change daily. Estrogen, progesterone, and cortisol influence our energy, our appetite, and fat storage. And we even have testosterone in the background, and we get a boost of testosterone around ovulation. So all those things influence our energy, our appetite, our fat storage. They even influence our ability to push hard at the gym. They influence our ability to build muscle. And that is a big deal. So knowing that and optimizing for that is going to be really helpful. We know that during the luteal phase, which is the second half of your menstrual cycle after ovulation, approximately days 15 to 28 of your cycle, your metabolism increases. So that's really good. So your resting metabolic rate goes up. So that's the rate at which at rest you're using or burning up calories. Okay. But as your metabolism goes up, your insulin sensitivity also changes. You become slightly more insulin resistant in that second half of your cycle where progesterone is king. Okay. This increases blood sugar. It also can increase cravings for simple carbohydrates. So, your pastas, your breads, maybe you've noticed you crave that right before your period starts. So that's that insulin resistance changing your hormones and changing what types of foods that you crave. So potentially craving, sugary foods and more simple carbohydrates. Okay, so our hormones change daily, and so we need to remember that and optimize for that in terms of our metabolism. Okay, women also burn fat differently. Okay, how does that work? So studies confirm that during high estrogen phases, and high estrogen phases are typically right before ovulation, your estrogen peaks, and right before your menstruation, you get another peak in estrogen. So, studies confirm that during high estrogen phases, your body is more efficient at breaking down fat, at fat oxidation or fat burning. However, progesterone dominance in the second part of your cycle makes the body store more fat. So, progesterone, because it's higher in the second phase, it makes you store more fat, makes you more insulin resistant, and makes you store more fat. Okay, so we burn fat differently and we store fat differently. And the other big difference, is that for us, over restricting backfires. Men typically don't have to have a breakfast when they wake up. They can go longer periods of time without eating without their body feeling stressed. Testosterone is king for them. And so they can go long periods of time without eating. For us, over restricting or cutting calories really affects our other hormones. So, chronic calorie restriction actually lowers our thyroid function, increases our cortisol, which is our stress hormone, and disrupts leptin and ghrelin. Ghrelin, those are two hormones that cue hunger and fullness, making hunger and cravings harder to control. So, when you are over restricting your calories, that sets off a chain of events, making it harder for you to control cravings. It disrupts thyroid function, makes you store more fat, things like that. And so maybe you've noticed, like if you were working out, you hit a plateau. You can't, all of a sudden, you can't lose weight. Or if you were restricting calories and were on a low calorie diet, all of a sudden you notice you start to gain weight. And you're like, wait a second, I'm restricting, I'm not eating a lot, and I'm starting to gain weight. I'm having more cravings. It's getting harder and harder for me to control those cravings. This is the answer. And we're going to go through more about that. So, have you ever noticed, like, maybe you looked at food and you're like, I gained 3 pounds just looking at that cake. And then your partner, your husband, your boyfriend decided that he's going to start lifting weights and he loses 5 pounds after lifting weights once. Again, back to our metabolism is different, our hormones are different. And so we should think about optimizing for our hormone function. Okay. So let's talk about three of the biggest metabolism mistakes that women make. Okay. These are common pitfalls that really can keep you stuck in terms of optimizing or improving your metabolism overall. So the big three that we'll go through today is eating too little and over exercising. I alluded to that already. We're going to talk about it in depth. Ignoring cycle-based eating and training. So that's the other one. And then the third is not managing our blood sugar. So those three really can shift our metabolism to a state that we don't want, to not an optimal state. And so let's go through that. So number one common pitfall that women can make where it comes to our metabolism is eating too little and over exercising. So how does this work? Research shows that women are more sensitive to calorie deficits and that chronic undereating actually causes your metabolism to adopt and retain fat instead of losing it. Okay, that's crazy. So instead of losing fat, being chronically undernourished, undereating, it actually makes you store more fat. So let's talk about how that is. So Chronic undereating affects your HPA axis. So, what is this HPA axis? HPA axis is the hypothalamic, pituitary, and adrenal axis, and it is, king in terms of controlling hormones, controlling cortisol. So, this over restricting and under eating and over exercising can actually increase your cortisol levels and slow down your metabolism. So, how does this work? The HPA axis, or hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, is a key part of your body's stress response system. So it includes the hypothalamus, which is an area in your brain. It includes the pituitary gland, which is an endocrine gland located at the base of your brain. And it includes your adrenal glands. These are glands, hormonal glands that are on top of your kidneys. This axis helps regulate cortisol, which is a hormone that plays a major role in metabolism, energy balance, blood sugar, and inflammation. And cortisol is a good thing. Cortisol is the thing that makes us feel alert in the morning when we wake up. A little bit we're groggy in the morning, and then cortisol is released and we feel more alert. We're able to function. It's, gives us that boost in energy. So it's important, but too much cortisol can be bad for our health. So let's talk about how that happens in terms of chronic undereating or overexercising. When you consistently undereat, specifically over weeks or months, so I'm not saying one day, but really weeks or months, if you're consistently undereating, your body perceives it as a chronic stressor. Now, that means that mechanisms or reactions take place to for your body to say, I'm under chronic stress, I need to do something about it. I don't like this level of stress all the time, right? Your body loves to be in homeostasis at an equilibrium. And to bring you back to equilibrium, your body is going to do things to bring you back. Okay, so how does this work? So when you're consistently under eating, your body perceives it as a chronic stressor because it's not receiving enough energy. It's not receiving enough calories to meet its needs. This stressor activates that HPA axis, the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenal axis, which responds by increasing cortisol production. So it increases, so you always have cortisol production, but this stressor makes you produce more cortisol. So a chain reaction happens. And so when your cortisol is increased, it causes your body to break down muscle. It's called catabolism for fuel. So instead of helping you build muscle, maybe you're, working out a lot and under eating, really restricting your calories. Instead of you building muscle, that high cortisol actually makes you break your muscles down to have energy. Isn't that crazy? This increases blood sugar short term. So short term, your blood sugar, the high cortisol increases blood sugar, but long term, it actually worsens your sensitivity to insulin. And we know that insulin is a hormone that's connected to blood sugar, connected to a lot of other processes, even ovulation. Insulin affects. So lots of different things insulin affects. So we really want to be as sensitive to insulin as absolutely possible, so that it doesn't, change our other hormones. Okay. So high cortisol also suppresses your thyroid hormone. So it suppresses thyroid conversion from T4 to T3, the active form of your thyroid hormones, which leads to, again, a slower metabolism. Okay. High cortisol also disrupts reproductive hormones like LH, FSH, gonadotropin releasing hormone. So all of these hormones are involved in ovulation. And so high cortisol disrupts these hormones, which can affect ovulation and your menstrual cycle. Okay. So what other consequence is there of chronic undereating and overexercising? It long term, again, over weeks to months, chronic undereating actually decreases your metabolic rate. So your body, because it's not getting enough calories, downshifts energy to conserve resources. So it downshifts how much energy it's burning at rest to really preserve resources. It feels under stress. It's saying, I'm not getting calories. I'm not getting enough calories. I really need to conserve my resources, store more fat, and really not burn as much energy as needed. Where can we cut that energy expenditure? And so your body starts to slow down your metabolic rate. You may feel fatigued, so tired, cold, right? Cold is also that thyroid hormone decreasing. May see more mood shifts and be more moody, and you might experience weight gain or a plateau in weight loss, even though you're eating less, even though you're cutting calories. So as a summary, when you are chronically restricting calories, it acts as a physiological stressor, dysregulates that HPA axis, and leads to a sustained elevation in cortisol. That high cortisol then promotes catabolic processes like breaking down your own muscles for energy, and inhibits thyroid conversion from T4 to that active T3, which ultimately suppresses your metabolism and affects your hormonal balance. Okay, so that's one. So, one thing that we as women can be doing in trying to stay healthy and trying to, not gain weight or maintain weight or maybe even lose weight, that can actually be hurting our metabolism and kind of making us go backwards, even though we're working so hard. Okay. So personally, I used to think that eating like 2,000 calories a day and doing, high intensity interval training 5 times a week was healthy. And what I found is initially, yeah, you feel really great, but long term, I started to feel exhausted without making any muscle gains. I saw that I wasn't building more muscle and working really hard. HIIT training is intense, right? High interval training is intense. And so I saw that I wasn't making progress in the muscle gains. And so the moment I started to work with my hormones instead of against them, started to um, lift more weights, my energy improved and I was able to start building muscle. Okay. And so I can already hear you saying, well, okay, how do I lose weight or not gain weight without restricting calories? And we're going to talk about that towards the end of the episode. So for sure, you're asking the right question. The key to this is making sure that you build muscle. You eat in a way that helps your body build muscle. You exercise in a way, lift weights, and depending on where you are, the older you are, the heavier you need to build to really promote more estrogen and promote more muscle building. But over restricting again is not the answer. So we're going to talk about how to eat to really promote that. Okay. The next pitfall is that women can make when it comes to our metabolism is ignoring cycle-based eating and training. Okay. So exercising the same way every day really ignores those hormonal fluctuations that we experience on a monthly basis. And so those hormonal fluctuations impact performance, they impact recovery, and they impact fat metabolism. And so the first half of your cycle is a low hormone phase, right? That follicular phase. And this is from the first day of your cycle, right? The first day of your period until right around ovulation. And so your estrogen and progesterone for most of that time, except right before ovulation and during ovulation, but for most of the time they're low. And this makes your body resilient to stress. And estrogen is rising towards the middle of your cycle, and you get a bump in testosterone around ovulation too. And really at that time, you could really push at the gym, okay? Estrogen is rising. And then in the high hormone phase, which is the luteal phase, the second half of your cycle after ovulation until menstruation, estrogen and progesterone levels are high, but progesterone is higher. And so, or I should say, is dominant in that part of your cycle. And so the body is actually more susceptible to stress and inflammation. And so we're going to talk about how to work out in the second phase of your cycle so that you prevent injury and really maximize results. Okay. And the third thing that women can be doing to really impact their metabolism is not managing blood sugar. So we know that women's metabolism is more insulin sensitive, meaning that the timing of our carbohydrate intake matters. Research shows that insulin resistance is a major driver of hormonal chaos for women, because again, it impacts ovulation, it impacts the hormones of of our cycle, our cycling hormones. And so it's important to really prevent insulin resistance. So how do we do that? Studies show that consuming protein and fiber for women before eating carbohydrates significantly lowers blood sugar spikes and improves metabolic efficiency. So if you are eating you have a plate full of everything and you consume fiber, so right, like your salad, and you consume your protein before you consume your carbohydrates, it prevents that huge glucose spike, which then causes your insulin to go up. And so just changing the order in which you eat your food, and of course consuming whole foods that your body takes longer to digest. Complex carbohydrates take longer to digest, and so that really helps manage your blood sugar. Um, Another thing to manage your blood sugar, remember how I said men can go long periods of time without eating? It's not so great for women. And so starting your day with a heavy protein breakfast or high protein breakfast, and the research says 30 grams of protein at breakfast is really a great place to start. So really giving your body protein for breakfast helps manage that blood sugar, and avoiding sugar spikes. And how do you avoid sugar spikes? Avoid processed carbs, focused on whole foods like eggs, salmon, avocado really helps manage your blood sugar. Another tip or thing you can do: walking after meals lowers blood sugar and improves insulin sensitivity. So like a 10 to 15-minute walk even makes a difference in that sugar spike after a big meal, lunch, breakfast, dinner. Okay. So we talked about the things that the mistakes that we can be making to affect our metabolism. So here are 5 big things that you can do starting even today to really help with your metabolism and to help reset and optimize your metabolism. Okay. Number 1, eat for your cycle. Each phase of your cycle requires different nutrition and different lifestyle support. So, eating for your cycle becomes really important. So, align macronutrient intake with your hormonal needs. So, what does that mean? If you're in your follicular phase, if you're in the first half of your cycle, approximately days 1 from the beginning of your period to day 14, increase complex carbohydrates like quinoa, sweet potatoes for energy. Okay. If you're in the luteal phase, the second phase of your cycle, 15 to 28, we're more insulin resistant during that time, and really prioritizing magnesium, B vitamins, and anti inflammatory foods is going to be really important, and scaling back on that carbohydrate. Okay, another way to prioritize for your metabolism, to reset or optimize your metabolism, is to prioritize protein and healthy fats. So, studies show again that protein intake of 30 grams per meal improves satiety and stabilizes blood sugar. Okay, so aim for 30 grams of protein per meal. Okay, swap low fat for hormone friendly whole foods is another way to really prioritize those healthy fats. Things like salmon, right? Wild caught salmon, things like that that contain those healthy fats. And swap skipping breakfast for a high protein, high fiber breakfast for stable energy throughout the day, especially if you work out. So if you work out in the morning, a lot of us, I used to make the same mistake. I would work out on an empty stomach. I would say, well, I feel gross having a full stomach when I'm working out. And so for women, it's actually not great to work out on an empty stomach. You don't have to have a full breakfast, but based on the research of Dr. Stacy Sims, she talks about working out and how to optimize your nutrition. You want to have about 10 to 15 grams of protein before your workout in the morning. So whether that's adding collagen to your coffee and having a small protein, a bowl of yogurt, things like that, to give your body some protein to say, you're safe. Don't spike your cortisol, don't start to break down muscle. Let's help you build muscle. So you want to give your body some protein before working out. And then after you work out, within about 30 to 45 minutes of working out, you want to consume about 30 more grams of protein to really, again, tell your body, don't spike that insulin. You're safe. You have food coming, you have protein coming, and to use that protein to then build muscle instead of breaking down your muscle. And you worked so hard during that workout, doing heavy lifting, doing maybe cardio or HIIT, interval training, right? High intensity interval training. And at the end, your body ends up breaking down your own muscle and kind of like you make no progress forward. So about 10 to 15 grams of protein before you work out. Don't work out on an empty stomach. Again, you can make it easy. Put some protein in your coffee and whatever drink you're drinking. And then again, 30 grams within 30 to 45, maybe 60 minutes of finishing your workout. You want to give your body more protein. Okay, what else? What else can we do to reset and optimize our metabolism? You want to sync your workouts. Research supports strength training during high estrogen phases and then restorative exercise when progesterone is dominant. So towards the end of your cycle. So low hormone or follicular phase from the day of menstruation until ovulation, right around. You want to focus on high intensity workouts, heavy resistance training, and really prioritizing recovery. You're going to need time for your body to recover from one workout to the next. You don't want to push hard every single day. You want to switch up muscle groups, things like that. In your high hormone phase, in your luteal phase, the second half of your cycle after ovulation, you really want to dial back the intensity. You want to do steady state aerobic work. You want to do moderate resistance training, so moderate weightlifting, and really focus on mobility, functional strength, right? Multi-joint exercises. So maybe like lunges, things like that, lunges, overhead presses that use multiple joints, and really focus on technique, because in the second part of your cycle, you are more prone to injury. Okay. And so really focusing on technique, proper lifting technique, you always want to focus on that, but you're just more prone to injury. So really pay attention. Okay. So one tip is to track your own cycle and to personalize this for yourself. Know when you are in what phase, right? There are apps that you can use. There are wearables that you can use to really help with this, and listen to your body. Sometimes you might think, oh, I'm going to push really hard at the gym. You get up, you go to the gym, you get through that. Oh, I'm exhausted. You get to the gym, you're trying to push hard and you feel awful. You just feel so tired. Adjust, right? Give your body 10 minutes. And if after 10 minutes of doing what you plan to do, you really are very tired or not feeling up to it, adjust, right? Know your body, listen to your body, and don't be afraid to adjust your training based on how you feel. Okay. So what else can we do? We need to optimize our sleep and stress. That's another thing, right? Because though poor sleep and stress can cause that cortisol to spike. Not just under eating and overtraining, but so many things in our world can cause our cortisol to spike. And so what we want to do is we want to optimize and really help our body. There's no such thing as no stress. And so figuring out a way how we can really help our body decompress and be aware of stressful times, so that we can maybe go outside, get some fresh air, maybe go for a walk to tell our body to kind of flush out that cortisol, to lower that cortisol. So what can we do? Cortisol dysregulation is a key factor in metabolic slowdowns. We went over exactly how it happens. And so prioritizing aligning your circadian rhythm really improves hormone balance. Okay. So circadian rhythm alignment, meaning eating, being awake at the times that that the sun is out, being active, getting plenty of sleep, things like that. So a couple of things that we can do. Sleep deprivation really wrecks cortisol and insulin levels, right? The data says it really messes up our cortisol and insulin levels if we don't get enough sleep. So what can we do? Aim for 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. Ditch screens about an hour before bed. for that circadian rhythm regulation to tell your body it's dark outside, I'm going to sleep. And really block blue light after 7 p.m. Once that sun sets, you really shouldn't be, or we all really shouldn't be looking at bright screens. And so blocking blue light after 7 p.m. Another thing for our body to really sync our circadian rhythm is to stop eating 3 to 4 hours before bed, to dim lights in the house to mimic what it's like outside. If the sun has set, we shouldn't have every single light in the house on. Our light bulbs should be dim, more calm, versus that bright fluorescent light that we are often exposed to, especially our night shift workers, right, with bright lights out. And find ways to decompress from stress that work for you, whether that's, deep breathing, whether that's just relaxing your body, going for a walk, getting again some fresh air. Find ways that work for you. Okay, what else can we do? Another, or our fifth thing that we can do to really optimize our metabolism is to supplement smart. So there are some supplements that have been found to really help our metabolism, really help our body in times of stress, in times of those high cortisol spikes. And so let's talk a little bit about that. So a couple things. Magnesium is a big one, B vitamins and adaptogens to really help modulate that cortisol and support your mitochondrial function. And your mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell where ATP is produced, where a lot of chemical reactions are produced to give you energy. And so we really want to support and optimize our mitochondrial function. So here's the deal. Your body has a stress thermostat, right? And that's that HPA axis that we talked about. And so when life feels overwhelming, this system turns up the heat and pumps out that cortisol. If your stress is constant, whether that's from not getting enough sleep or poor sleep, whether that's stress at work or even dieting, like we talked about, your body stays in overdrive in that high cortisol. And so that's where magnesium, B vitamins, and adaptogens come in. Think of them as your body's stress reset button and energy boosters. So magnesium, what it does is it calms the stress response and helps your cells turn food into energy. Without magnesium, your body's stress system kind of gets stuck in the on button. And your mitochondria, the little powerhouses, really can't keep up. Magnesium is required for over 300 enzymatic reactions in our body, which these reactions are essential in that stress response and in energy production. And the hard thing is that chronic stress actually depletes magnesium. So it makes us go through our magnesium, whether that's from food or supplements, makes us go through that magnesium faster, which creates a vicious cycle, heightened stress reactivity, and mitochondrial dysfunction. And so in terms of taking a magnesium supplement, you could take a supplement that is helpful, like something like magnesium glycinate. You can use magnesium lotion, look for lotions that are well absorbed through the skin. So you can do different things. You can also eat magnesium rich foods to really help supplement magnesium, especially towards the end of your cycle. Another thing that's important in all these enzymatic reactions that is needed for your mitochondria to function properly are B vitamins. So B vitamins help your mitochondria create energy and also help regulate your mood and your nervous system. So chronic stress burns through these fast as well. Okay, especially vitamins B5 and B6, which are key for making and balancing cortisol. And so methylated forms of these vitamins are better absorbed and are easier for our body to use. So maybe you've heard, so methylated versus unmethylated, they have a methyl group, makes it on the compound that makes it easier for our body to use them. So it's really important for us to take vitamins in forms that are very easy for our body to use. So maybe you've heard of like methylfolate or methylcobalamin. Those are all B vitamins that are methylated, easier to use. Okay. And again, you can get these from our foods. Okay. What about adaptogens? So adaptogens, these are herbs like ashwagandha, rhodiola, holy basil. These help your body respond to stress without kind of like freaking out or feeling overwhelmed. These adaptogens gently bring your cortisol levels back to balance and support steady state energy. And these are, maybe you've seen them in teas, maybe you've seen them as a capsule. So it helps your body deal with that stress, support steady energy without the crash. if you're going to start a supplement, if you're going to take any of these adaptogens do interact with medications. And so absolutely make sure that you're talking to a healthcare provider to make sure that they don't interact with anything that you're taking. They can affect hormone function, things like that. So really be careful and do your research before starting anything. Okay, so we covered a lot today. We covered why men and women's metabolisms are different, the common metabolism mistakes that women can be making, and we went over 5 big things that you can do to improve and optimize your metabolism today. So, as you know, we have a tradition on this podcast. At the end of each episode, we talk about the Life Optimizer Challenge. And so today's challenge is to pick one thing that you've heard today that you can start to optimize your health. Maybe it's that eating before working out, eating 10 to 15 grams of protein. Maybe it's starting your day with a high protein breakfast, 30 grams of protein, figuring out what 30 grams of protein looks like for you with the foods that you eat, and then starting to take or make changes so that you're eating 30 grams of protein every meal, or at least start with 30 grams of protein in the morning. See if maybe you're already eating the protein. Maybe you can adjust your workouts to really adjust to how you work out in the beginning of your cycle, and then adjusting how you work out towards the second half of your cycle. So really, I think we've had a lot of good information, and pick one thing, see if anything really stood out for you. And ladies, when you start to work with your body, with your hormones, you see significant changes, right? You're going hand in hand with your metabolism, with your hormones, instead of kind of going opposite and opposing it. Okay. So as you try this, let me know in the comments what's working for you, what you're finding really interesting, or maybe how you're feeling, or maybe your energy or your mood changes as you make a shift in how you eat or how you work out based on your hormone function. Or maybe this helps you lose the 5 baby pounds that you were trying to lose but really have been struggling with. So let me know. I'm always curious about how the things that research says work, how they work in real life, and how they're helping you. I definitely feel that they've helped me, and so I want you to share with me as well. Okay. And I'm so glad that you were able to come and join me on the Life Optimizer podcast. I'm so glad you're here. I will see you in the next episode.